best project we ended up doing during the era when I was running the agency was a thing called the West Norwood Feast, which is a monthly community-owned and run street market, which is still going, 12 years and one pandemic later in West Norwood in South London. And we would have at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning, local people getting out of bed, unpaid, to come and put up market stalls up and down the streets of West Norwood. And I used to think, maybe these people always secretly had a burning desire to run a street market. But I don't think that's what it is. I think it's that the street market is giving people an excuse to do something that gives them a great deal. And that has something to do with the fact that running this together as a community, it's outside of the logics that dominate the societies that most of us have grown up in, because these societies are dominated by this twin logic of the state and the market. The logic of the state is people do things because they're told to by people who have power over them. The logic of the market is people do things because they're being paid money, and if they don't gather enough money in the course of a month, then they're homeless next month. And the only reason why human beings are here at all is because for almost all of our history, we had a greater range of reasons why we come together and do things than those two powerful, rather sort of brute, simple logics that have come to dominate a vast area of the social terrain of modernity. And so, why was I at the same time as writing the Dark Mountain Manifesto, running these projects to create community-owned street markets? Because it was a way of learning about and practicing the skills of coming together to do things for reasons other than because we've been paid to or told to. And I think that there's a hidden capacity there that's just not on the not on the map of either the market or the state policy-making world. And that, if anything is going to make things turn out less badly than we mostly think that they're going to in the time to come, that hidden capacity of what happens when people come together and do the work of being human together, that's where it might come from. And our motto when we were running those projects with Spacemakers was, people are good at being people. We've been doing it for a long time. And if we are finding ourselves in situations where everything seems to be really dysfunctional and really badly done, it's probably because of something we've not been doing for very long at all that's got in the way of our evolved and cultural capacity for being human together and finding solutions at a human scale.
If you look at a lot of traditional historic agrarian systems, they're very, very cleverly find ways to give people autonomy when autonomy is what's needed, create collective labor when that's what's needed, and share the harvest. So it's not about kind of personal accumulation to grow as many carrots as you possibly can and sell them. It's more that you just don't need 30 people weeding a small patch of carrots and disagreeing about it, but you do sometimes need to bring people together. One of my teachers, Paul Richards, he did his work in West Africa, Sierra Leone, with Swidden farmers, where burning, you got to burn the secondary forest to establish the crop. That's a big collective job. Scandinavia, interesting stuff with Swidden farming historically, maybe particularly in Finland as well. So you bring people together, and the way that the farmers did it in Sierra Leone is by brewing beer and throwing a party. So the farmer that makes the best beer and throws the best party gets the people. They come do the work, and then it's also pro-social. And you look at a lot of commons, they are about managing the larger aspects of the landscape. I've called it in some of my writing the elemental commons. You can't manage fire risk, you can't manage watersheds and irrigation, you can't manage certain aspects of soil management as an individual farm. So you have to come together as a community. But then there's other aspects where everyone is different, everybody wants to do their own thing, And then in terms of the harvest, we are intrinsically reliant upon one another. It's not about accumulating the most and being the best off. It's always about, putting the produce into the, larger life of, your family, your household, your neighborhood, your community. And so we can really learn a lot from historic agrarian societies that, they faced all of this very directly. And if they got it wrong, it had very serious consequences in a way that we've insulated ourselves from in modern society. But, the way that we've set up this conversation, we can't insulate ourselves from that long term. So we really need to learn from this kind of clever dance of, household, community, commons, collective landscape management, and so on. Everywhere is different, but that's the challenge before us.
Why don't we have community? To have community, you have to need each other. And when you are trying to produce your own food, and you will know this because we had a plan to do something when you came to my place, and it totally didn't work out because of circumstances with this sheep. And that's what happens when you are directly working with living systems. If you are a gardener, if you have a farm, like if you're interacting with living complex systems, you will become humble because it won't work out. You may have a plan, but it won't be like that because there is so many factors. And as Chris is saying, that's when you really realize that I can't do this on my own. And that's where community starts. And also, I mean, both when you produce food and when you consume food, when we have community, we share a meal, a small meal or a big meal or a party. And to me, at this time of the year, like harvest time is when there is such abundance. I feel so rich. I can go out and I can just get a lot of food, and I have so much food that I want to share it with people. And I think just this sense of abundance, like in a culture that is so focused on scarcity and is actually also creating scarcity, that sense can teach us important things.